KVT Rocks, and my guest today is Josh Ainsworth. And you've brought your friend.
Yes, ma'am.
Who's your friend?
This is my Autel Evo 640T thermal drone.
That's a lot of words for a drone. What does he do? I'm calling him he, I mean.
Yep, so this drone has a thermal camera, so that's my primary use with this drone. We'll take amazing photography and photographs, but the drone is just a tool. So this is primarily focused for thermal.
Okay. So the way this show happened today is you contacted me about a Facebook group wanting to know if you could sort of post on it. And I was actually, of course you can, obviously. I was much more interested in when you said that you were doing pet rescue with a thermal drone. And it was, wow, what's that?
Yeah.
So how does it work? What do you do?
So someone would reach out to me. Hey, I have a lab or a husky or whatever it may be, and it's been missing. Can you come help look for it? I'll get their information, because usually I will pull up the search area on my controller ahead of time, so I can see any obstacles in the area, and it'll also allow me to plan a grid. Then I'll show up, I'll talk to the pet owner, how long has the pet been missing, I'll upload my waypoints, if you will, and I'll start flying.
So if my badly behaved cat goes, I live on the bluff, if he goes missing there, I contact you, you pull up the bluff on your grid.
Yep.
And then how does it work?
So if I just show up to your residence, and makes it far more difficult at night, of course, too, because just like your phone, it leaves tracks so you can see where you've been. If I am flying a wooded area and I'm just flying manually, I might be zigzagging all over the place. So I will actually set a grid pattern. So if you have a 3-acre chunk of land, I will set it to fly down, turn, come back. That way I'm covering, and I'm just, and it flies autonomously. I just set the elevation, the speed.
And then you see something different on the screen if there's a critter there. Yep,
so thermal is picking up infrared energy, body heat. So if there's something that is putting out body heat, it will see it.
How do you know the difference between, say, a raccoon or a bear or my cat or a fox? Because they're all in the vicinity.
So it has a very high-end camera with zoom capability. I would normally start my search at like 350 feet or so to get a ballpark. And then if I pick up a heat signature, I'll zoom in, and then I can lower the drone. If I know the tree canopy is only, the highest trees are about 75 feet, then I know I can come down to 150 and clearly get a better resolution of what I'm looking at.
So then your photograph would show if it was Randy Raccoon or my foolish cat.
And the thermal image is pretty clear. You'll see in a little bit. But it also has different attachments. So this is a visible light. So this
like a spotlight.
Yep, spotlight. So if it was 10 p.m. and I picked up what appears to be a dog, I can actually turn that spotlight on and see for sure.
A spy camera for your dog who's out having a good time.
Yeah.
It really is amazing. What else do you use your drones for?
So I have been doing a lot of like construction progress updates for general contractors. I have a photography drone, and what I'll do is I've been going like every 3 weeks and setting waypoints for, let's say it's an apartment building being built, and the contractor wants each cardinal direction from 150 feet and then a little further back, I can set those waypoints and then go back in 3 weeks, launch the drone, and it'll fly to those waypoints, same height, same distance, and capture those photos. And then the contractor can see, the first shoot, they were laying the foundation. Then they were framing out the walls. Then they're putting siding on. Then they're doing windows.
Wow. And then the roof and
Yep.
what goes on the roof.
And that's important to contractors because they can use those photos for loans, for other bids to other jobs. Say, hey, like this is what we've been building.
This is not your day job, right?
No, I'm active duty National Guard. So right now I'm doing this
For fun.
as a hobby and on the side. My hopes is when I retire, I would love to be able to do it full time.
Sure. And you guys get to retire pretty early if you choose to.
Yeah, so the typical guard person, 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year, would retire at 20 years, but you don't collect your pension till you're 60.
Right.
I have 18 years active duty, so
2 years to go.
2 more, I could,
Yeah.
if I wanted to, yeah.
Sure. And by then, this business may have really taken off.
Yeah, I mean, right now, drone work is super saturated in certain areas. Rural Vermont, I haven't seen many people offering thermal services.
I haven't seen anybody offering thermal services, which was why when you contacted me, that was so interesting.
Yep.
I mean, there's a lot of people taking videos of our gorgeous scenery, tourist attraction stuff, but this was something that's so different.
Yep.
And I had no clue about what you could do with construction.
Yep. One important point I should make is there's a fair amount of cost and training involved. There's really 2 types of drone flying or piloting. You have a hobbyist
Right.
or recreational and commercial. For a recreational flyer, someone goes to Best Buy, buys one, wants to take sunset photos
Yeah.
for their Facebook. If I want to take a photo of this building for you to use for marketing, that's commercial
Right.
work. Even
Right.
if there's no money involved.
It's still commercial.
It's still commercial. And in order to fly and monetize commercially, you need to have an FAA remote pilot certification.
And is that a long, complex training?
It's a fair amount of prep work if you want to pass on the first test, but it's proctored. So you go down to like Heritage Aviation by the Burlington Airport, go in, do your test, you get a nice fancy blue card. That's good for 2 years. But insurance and software and I mean, these batteries are about $300 a battery.
Wow.
So if I'm going to be out there for 4-6 hours flying, the climate certainly affects the battery life.
I bet.
So you're not going to really want to take on jobs if you only have 2 batteries.
No. So there's a significant investment.
Depending on what you want to do with it, yeah.
Right.
Yep.
But it's really sounding as though we're just at the beginning of this industry. And where do you think the future is with it? Where's it going to go?
Oh, drones are a thing of the future. You will see like Grubhub and food deliveries. I see it in the next decade. Like you're going to have Domino's delivered to the Bluffs with a drone. Maybe not here, but cities for sure.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that sort of makes me laugh because my mental image is of a drone flying over, holding a pizza and letting it go.
Sure.
Yeah, which may or may not be factually realistic.
Yep. They're certainly being used more and more by law enforcement.
Yeah.
Search and rescue. There's a lot of debate on privacy laws and all
I'm
that.
sure.
But again, it is just a tool, and a very effective one.
Right.
So however creative you can get,
Right.
you could come up with 1,000 things to use that for.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly know living up here that Border Patrol are using them all the time. That now you don't have to trip some sensor if you cross the border, that they're going to get you from the air.
Yeah. I mean, you could take this drone right here and go look for a missing dog, go inspect a power line for Vermont Electric Company or a substation, and then take it and do a commercial roof inspection. So the possibilities are endless.
Your opportunities are really diverse.
Yeah. I think the people that monetize the most out of the drone industry, they pick their niche and they go all in. Like, I'm not that interested in real estate. I would do some, but I find it more fascinating to do construction or search and rescue.
Yeah.
But if you're in Los Angeles and there's multi-million-dollar homes and you're doing 5-6 real estate gigs a week, it's probably pretty profitable.
I would bet it is. Yeah, I mean, clearly that's not the Northeast Kingdom.
Correct.
At least not this century.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it really has potential for where you can go. You showed me something just before we started where you'd taken a lot of photographs and somehow they got put into a circle and then you had this wonderful 3D image.
Yeah, so that's called photogrammetry. And the textbook answer is the science of taking photographs and stitching them into a 3D model. So normally for a building, like I use St. Mary's Church for example, you have to get a bunch of different angles. So if this is a church, I did a bunch of nadir photos, which are looking straight down.
Sure.
And then I flew out like 75 feet with a 45-degree angle to do orbital. And because you want to capture under the roof, the eaves.
Right.
And you edit them all in post-production, and you essentially stitch them together with all those overlapping photos, and it creates a 3D model that you can orient with your mouse. You can turn it sideways, flip it upside down, and those are used a lot in construction, disaster relief like FEMA, because you can actually, depending on the type of drone you're using, you can actually pull data measurements from those. Like click a point on your roof to the end of it and it'll tell you how many board foot of lumber.
Yeah. So for search and rescue, I mean, I'm thinking of some of the earthquakes or the rainstorms. It would be a way of assessing if a building was safe enough for people to go in and see if they can pull others out.
Yep. I'm actually doing a UAS or Unmanned Aerial System course at UVM the end of this month for 4 days. They started it last year, and it's hosted by FEMA for disaster response, data collection. The UVM Geospatial Lab are currently using drones to monitor the algae levels in Lake Champlain, as well as rock slides in like Smuggler's Notch.
Yeah.
So, and we're starting to get into high-end drones at this point, because then they're using technology called LiDAR, which is laser.
Right.
So.
Is that a field you're going to move into?
Not anytime soon, no.
I was going to say, I'm assuming your little friend here couldn't do that.
The big difference is great drone can do a lot of stuff, but there is limitations.
Sure.
If your dog is lost in a heavily wooded area, this drone is not going to penetrate the canopy.
Right.
Like, I can only see so much. A LiDAR capable drone will penetrate the foliage all the way down into the ground because it's a laser.
Right. So you'd really have to have a lucrative job stream to think about adding that to your collection.
LiDAR is being used heavily in the agricultural sector. They can actually fly those grid missions I was explaining over fields, and they can generate reports to the farmers of this corner is bad soil, and over here is good planting soil, just for an example.
How?
Because the LiDAR will actually penetrate the ground.
So they can sort of test the ground at the same time.
Yep.
Wow.
Way
really
different
is
ballpark than what
mind-blowing.
I'm in right now, but yeah.
Yeah, mind-blowing.
Yep.
Huh. So instead of, say, digging for oil as they have done in the past, they can fly LiDAR and maybe know where there's oil for the future and not have to trash a whole park or ocean.
Potentially. I'm not very experienced in the LiDAR field, but
Yeah.
you know, it's like a Camry and a Ferrari. You know,
Yeah.
it's a different level.
Yeah, I've never driven a Ferrari,
Yeah.
but I'd be willing.
Yep.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So what can you show us? You've got a monitor and we've got a toy here.
Yep.
So if you explain as you're doing it,
I sure will.
it'd be wonderful.
So this is what the normal screen looks like when it's powered on. There's a bunch of different options. If I was going to do a mission like that grid I was telling you about, and I mean I could just put in it may not pull satellites right now, but this is in Hyde Park. So I just did project, and this was a random house. Somebody called me. So you can set your parameters, how big of an area, and then what you do is you set your altitude. So if you look up in the top right corner, you see that 76? That's how many photos that this is going to capture in 3 minutes and 42 seconds.
Wow.
Based off that elevation. So if I go up to 371 feet, it's only going to capture 22 because it's covering more
It's
ground.
harder, yeah.
You know, the lower I get. So this would be what I would do if I was doing photogrammetry. Okay. This is the normal RGB, red, green, blue
Yeah.
daytime camera. You got different options. So this is what the thermal camera looks like. And there's 12 or 13 different color palettes. The color palettes really come down to personal preference. However, each palette does have its pros and cons for different industries.
Sure.
Like search and rescue would normally use white or black hot. And what that means is the hotter the object in the screen
Yeah.
for white hot is going to show white, as you can see in the camera right there.
Right.
The tripod is black. If I switch that to black hot
That's pretty clear too.
or rainbow, normally like the iron bows or the rainbows, those would be used more for like infrastructure power line inspections, because those will really make those hot spots stand out.
So anybody flying the oil line, which happens here, if there was a quote hot spot, if there was a leak, it would show up.
Yeah, you have to be very careful depending on what you're doing, because a power line company probably is not going to hire someone unless they're level 1 and 2 thermography certified.
Yeah.
It's easy to look at a thermal image and say, I know that's hot, but to really interpret the data
Right.
is a different thing. Let's say you're flying right in that golden hour, right, where it's starting to get hard to see outside. So you want to do like a picture-in-picture. So now I got the area I'm focusing on is in thermal, but if I pick this up and just move it, as you can see on the screen,
Yeah.
now that tripod is in normal RGB. You can change the temperature to spot, or you can do a range. So if I want to look at a solar panel,
Right.
and I can see the lowest temperature, the highest, and the average temperature. So those are all features that are built in.
Amazing.
And of course, you get a zoom feature. And this light, this is a spotlight, as we talked about. This is a speakerphone or speaker. So if I was looking for a missing skier at Smugs, and I'm flying in thermal, and I spot them, I can actually speak through my controller. Hey, I see you. I'm saving your grid coordinates. Help is on the way. And they can hear through the drone.
Yeah. That's amazing. I mean, how low down does the drone have to go for a skier to be able to hear you who's on the ground?
It's pretty loud. I mean, I've flown it a couple 100 feet, just messing with it at my house.
Yeah.
And I could hear it fine at like 200 feet. And the light is the same.
Order the pizza, I'm nearly home. Right.
Like, I won't shine it right at the camera, but just for an example, that's
pretty bright. Wow. It's really amazing.
So yeah, a lot of options, really, whatever you can think of.
How long have you been working with this stuff?
I bought my first drone about 8 years ago. I just love technology and avionics, and just a typical want a drone, take some pictures in the fall, and decided I wanted to get my commercial license and
Take better pictures.
Yeah.
Then.
Yeah. And sometimes the price can scare people away. But, you know, it is a supply and demand economy, and a lot of people don't understand the thousands that some of these drones cost, the insurance to fly them.
Right. What kind of insurance do you have to have?
I mean, legally, you don't have to have insurance.
Right.
If I'm flying for those general contractors and they say, I want you to carry $1 million policy, then I use a program where I don't carry it year round because I'm not a full-time pilot.
Right.
So what I'll do is I'll get coverage per event. So if I know I'm flying in Burlington from that 11 to 1, I'll lock it in from 10 to 2 for
And
that amount of coverage. Yep. It just bills me for that 4 hours.
So it's a fairly flexible industry, which is really unusual for the insurance industry.
Yeah. And that insurance is not the hull or the drone itself. Those are add-ons. This is if my drone crashes into
somebody. Yeah.
Yeah. If my drone falls out of the sky and lands on a guy doing a roof.
Yeah.
And he falls off the roof.
That would be good insurance to have. And presumably there have been incidents where drones have fallen from the sky.
Yeah. It's not very common because the technology of these things, if you can see, all these circles right here,
Yeah.
all these black and underneath, those are all omnidirectional avoidance sensors. So up to a couple feet, this thing will stop. Or you can set it in the parameters to brake or to do a fly around.
Right.
The tricky part is power lines, small diameter objects. Those sensors have a hard time picking up.
Yeah.
Other than that, these things basically fly themselves.
And you hope the humans stay out of the way.
Yeah. Flying over people, that's against FAA regulations without an OOP waiver, operations over people.
Right. And it's
so
hard to get a consent from every person you're flying over.
Correct. So like I flew during the eclipse.
Yes.
Thousands of people in Newport. I didn't go down to Gardner Park and fly directly over people. I actually was down here at the funeral home parking lot and took off over the lake and captured everyone at Prouty Beach. But I was not directly over anybody.
So those videos I saw from the area around Prouty, you probably took.
Yep.
Cool.
So they're really...
I recognize some people in them.
Yeah.
And we all did, obviously.
Yep. So for the most part, they're very safe.
Yeah.
You kind of have to be trying to make a mistake or crash one of these things.
Yeah.
And as long as you're following the laws and not being dumb with it.
Right. How do you even know the laws? I mean, they sound really complicated as you're describing them.
The average person that just wants to buy a drone to fly it are not going to know. I didn't until I started pursuing it's called the Part 107. That's the remote pilot certification.
Sure.
And these are all questions on that exam. And like 90% of the test is based off manned aircraft. So you have sectional charts, which are like maps that pilots use to see airspace. You need to know weather reports that airports put out. When very little of that applies to me flying this.
Right.
But the airspace certainly does. I mean, even right here in little old Newport, we have DART flying in. And they come in low.
Yes.
So I have to be cognizant of that.
Yeah, I mean, the helicopter that comes into the hospital comes in regularly.
Yep. So the general, it's not a rule of thumb, it's the FAA law. Unsecured airspace is called Class G, and that's 400 feet. So right now we're not within 5 miles of a major airport, and we're Class G airspace. So from Prouty Beach Campground or Gardner Park, I can fly 400 feet. The drone itself will go like 3,000 feet. So I need to make sure I'm watching the controller from my elevation. If a DART helicopter comes in, it is my responsibility to adhere to their flight path. So if I see it coming, I need to lower down to 100 feet or something.
And how would you know it was coming in?
Usually you hear it before you see it.
Right.
But the newer end drones have module called Remote ID and ADS, and that is a system that all aircraft in the sky uses. So my controller will actually say manned aircraft in the vicinity.
Wow.
Be aware. Yep.
You were telling me earlier as well about, really it's saying, don't try this if you think you can get away with it, if you don't have all the credentials and all of the other pieces, because they'll catch you.
Oh, so the remote identification, so all drones need to have remote ID, and that's either coming from the manufacturer with one, or if it's an older drone, it needs to be available through a software update or an external device. It's not very big, and you just attach it to it.
Right.
And the purpose of that is so law enforcement and the FAA can track the drone and the controller.
Right.
If a drone operator was to fly their drone over an unauthorized location, a jail, and somebody spots that, it's awfully hard to determine where the pilot is standing.
Right.
And that's the intent with this remote ID. Okay, we see a drone in unauthorized airspace. They can ping the information off the registered serial number and say, oh, well, this guy or gal is standing here. And it could be 2 miles away.
Wow. Yeah. What about an unregistered drone? Can they track that?
It's hard to say. I mean,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, the FAA, in Josh Ainsworth's opinion, is not messing with the little person.
Right.
They got bigger fish to fry.
More important drones.
Yeah, you know, if I was to take this thing and fly it over the runway at BTV in front of an F-35,
Then you'd be in trouble.
I would be on the news and it'd be a big deal. But if I was to fly this thing 50 feet over what I'm supposed to, 450 feet, the cops probably aren't showing up at my house.
Right.
I'm not condoning that, but I'm saying they're not going to catch everybody.
Right.
So just do the best you can. Be honest.
Yeah.
Look out for yourself.
I presume there's consequences if you keep messing up.
Oh, they're steep.
Yeah.
There's fines upward of $100,000.
Wow.
I mean, you're dealing with the FAA. So.
Yeah. Yeah, big guns.
Yep.
Interesting. If somebody was interested in you hunting for their pet or looking at the construction of work in progress,
Yep.
they would just contact you?
Yeah, I have a website, greenmountainaerialsolutions.com, and my email is greenmountainaerialsolutions@gmail.com.
Pretty straightforward.
Yep, and same thing on social media.
Sure.
You can find me on Facebook.
Right.
Yep.
What's the sort of cost for something, I don't mean for a pet, but the cost of construction?
The average rate is around $150 an hour. Yeah. And back to my previous point, a lot of people would think that's pretty steep. But if you factor in the man hours or the equipment, if the general contractor wanted a picture of the roof,
Right.
he's going to need to put someone on a scissor lift,
Yes.
and I could be there for 10 minutes
And he's
have
going to
it
have to
done.
rent the lift, and so it
A,
goes. Yeah.
A helicopter to inspect power lines, I've heard is like $2,500
Right.
for half a day.
Oh, I would think at least. There's a small plane that flies from Newport to Maine to inspect the oil pipeline,
Yeah.
and it goes every other week. So
Yeah,
that's
that
not
would be
cheap.
pretty much impossible for a drone,
Right.
because the last thing I forgot to mention is we always need to remain visual line of sight. So
you can't
if
follow it to Maine.
if I can stand on Prouty Beach, the beach, and see this drone all the way across Memphremagog to
Right.
St. Mary's, and it's a mile and a half, that's legal. If I was to fly it from this parking lot to Gardner Park, the minute I get by like Maple Fields and I lose sight because of the
Right.
buildings, that's illegal.
Ha.
Because I can't visually see it
Right.
without, you can't use binoculars or any additional optics either.
Right. Huh. Do the police have to follow the same regulations, or are there exceptions?
Not all police departments have drones. I
Right.
think
Some do.
you're starting to see more and more getting into it. They have the same regulations. They probably have waivers for certain things,
Right.
though.
Because I would bet that Border Control do, because they're certainly not going to have eyeball contact all the way along the border.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure what they do,
Yeah.
honestly.
So there must be exceptions there.
Yeah. Fire departments, this is a huge tool, even more than search and rescue, because they can use these to, when they put out a fire, they
Yeah.
can still determine if there's hot spots.
Right.
So you see a house, they've completely eliminated all those flames. They can hit it with this thermal camera and say, hey, this still has some a hotbed here.
And certainly the fires that we had last summer,
Yeah.
that would have been phenomenal.
Yep.
And presumably for a fire department to use them, they don't have to have all of the bells and whistles and training that you do. They could do it at a much more...
Well, no, they still would.
They need it
yeah.
all.
Yeah.
So they're going to have to hire you to come and check each fire.
Oh,
That's
no, normally what they would do is they would have like a aerial team.
Yeah.
Like the Vermont State Police. They have a small group
Yeah.
that are UAS pilots. So they will do crash reconstruction
Yeah.
of crime scenes, or this would have been awfully ideal for the bridge in Coventry,
Right.
because
Oh,
they
yeah.
evacuated out to like a mile.
Yeah, they did.
You know, you fly this thing 400 feet in the air and you get a better idea of what's going on.
That would have been wonderful, because that was a mess.
Yep.
Yeah. This is really fascinating. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming in and
Thanks for
doing
having me
this.
on, Pam. I appreciate it.
And I think you're going to get a lot of interest from this.
Good. Yeah.
It would be something that the high school, I would expect, would love to hear this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you for coming
Okay.
in, and we'll see where it goes.
Perfect.